Hello and welcome to the latest video on my top 1000 countdown. On this video we're going number 690 down to 681. So let's go to fighter number 690 now. Now Oliver McCall is 690. Okay, Oliver McCall, former heavyweight strap holder, beat 6 world champions. He fought 115 rounds against champions and he beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 19 rounds against Hall of Famers throughout his career. Oliver McCall had a total of 15 fights, okay, against rated fighters. And he scored 38 knockouts, okay, 28 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 14 knockouts in the first round. Now, Oliver McCall was top 10 rated as a fighter for 2 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 13 fights. McCall was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings. He did have 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. Oliver McCall's opposition rate comes in at 3 from 18 and opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So McCall had 13 fights against champions, okay, that includes 6 wins, 7 losses, 0 draws with 5 knockouts. He had 3 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 1 loss, no draw, with 1 knockout, and Oliver McCall, all in all, had 4 world title fights with a split record of 2 wins, 2 losses, 0 draws, whilst making 1 title defence. So McCall kicks off the 10. Our next fighter, okay, fighter number 689, is former coloured heavyweight champion, king of the Battle Royale, Bob Armstrong. Now, Bob Armstrong beat 2 world champions. He fought 64 rounds against champions. And Bob Armstrong didn't have a massive career. He had a very tough career for the short career he had, but he didn't have a massive career. He beat no Hall of Fame fighters and fought 16 rounds against Hall of Famers. Bob Armstrong, as a pre-rating era, has 0 fights against rated fighters, and he scored 15 knockouts, 9 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. Bob Armstrong also was never top 10 rated due to being pre-rating era. Now, I realised before starting this top 1000 that the rated fighters and pre-rated for years would disparage against the pre-rating era fighters because they don't have either of those at their disposal. Okay, the next top 1000 I will do in a few years' time, the big one, okay, that will be, okay, not include those. Okay, everything on the slides will match directly that all fighters have across all eras. I've now designed that slide and it is now 2 slides per fighter. Okay, so that top 1000 is going to be the top 1000 to wait for, but that will not come in 2026. It will come in 2027 or 2028, depending. So anyway, Bob Armstrong, okay, his longest unbeaten run was a run of 8 fights and he was never pound for pound rated. Bob Armstrong had 5 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Bob Armstrong's opposition fought rate was 2 from 18 and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Armstrong had 11 fights against champions. That includes 4 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw, with 4 knockouts. He had 2 fights against Hall of Famers, including no wins, 1 loss, 1 draw with 0 knockouts, and he had 7 title fights. That included 3 wins, 4 losses, no draws, with 2 title defences. So from Armstrong in 689 we go to 688, okay, to Eastern European fighter Krzysztof Wlodarczyk. Now Krzysztof Wlodarczyk, okay, beat 4 world champions. He fought 88 rounds against champions, and Wlodarczyk beat no Hall of Fame fighters, nor up to now has he fought any rounds against Hall of Famers. Wlodarczyk had a total of 10 fights against rated opponents and he scored 41 knockouts in his career, 21 of them in 3 rounds or less and 8 in the first round. Now Wlodarczyk, okay, was top 10 rated for a decade throughout his career of 10 years, and his longest unbeaten run was one of 20 fights. Now, Wlodarczyk was never pound for pound rated in my all-time rankings. He did have 3 fights against pound for pounders, but scored 0 wins in the 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate was 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Wlodarczyk had 9 fights against champions. That includes 5 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw with 3 knockouts. He had 0 fights against Hall of Famers, and world title fights Wlodarczyk had 12, okay, including 8 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and Krzysztof Wlodarczyk made 6 title defences. So on to fighter number 687, it is heavyweight puncher, the big cat, Cleveland Williams. Cleveland Williams beat 1 world champion. He fought 25 rounds against champions, and Williams beat no Hall of Fame fighters. He also fought 8 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career. Now, Cleveland Williams had 22 fights against rated opponents, and he scored a massive 60 knockouts, 38 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 19 knockouts were in the first round. Now, Williams was top 10 rated for 4 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 28 fights. Cleveland Williams was pound for pound rated for 0 years, and he had 3 fights against pound for pounders, but scored no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories. His opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Cleveland Williams had 5 fights against champions. Okay, that included 1 win, 4 loss, no draws with 1 knockout. He also had 3 fights against Hall of Famers. All of them are defeats. Just give me 1 second. Very strange. Yeah, he had 1 world title fight that also was a defeat. Okay, so on to our next fighter now. That is fighter number 686, Ray Mancini. Ray Mancini beat 4 world champions. Okay, he had a total of 84 rounds against champions that he fought in his career, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, also fighting 29 rounds against Hall of Famers. And Ray Mancini had 12 fights against rated opponents. Now, Ray Mancini scored 23 knockouts, 17 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 9 in the first round. And he was top 10 rated for a total of 4 years. Now, okay, yes, don't worry, man in Paris, I will wipe you from the channel momentarily, because ultimately you're too unintelligent to leave an intelligent comment, and I don't tolerate idiots like you on my channel who think you're smooth talkers and all of this stuff, so yeah. So anyway, Ray Mancini scored 17 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and he scored 9 in the first round. Now, he was top 10 rated for 4 years, and his longest unbeaten run was an unbeaten run of 20 fights in total. Now, he had no pound for pound rankings in my all-time rankings. He had 4 fights against pound for pounders overall, scoring no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate was 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Ray Mancini didn't have a massive career. Ultimately, he had 9 fights against champions, including 4 wins, 5 loss, no draw with 3 knockouts. He has 3 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 2 loss, no draw with 1 knockout, and he has 9 world title fights, including 5 wins, 4 losses, no draws, and 4 title defences. So Ray Mancini, okay, is in 686 when we go to fight number 685. Okay, his former light heavyweight champion Marvin Johnson. Marvin Johnson beat 4 world champions. He actually fought 81 rounds in total against champions, and Marvin Johnson beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 35 rounds against Hall of Famers overall in his career. And Marvin Johnson had a total of 15 fights against rated fighters. He scored 35 knockouts in his career, 15 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 7 in the first round. Now, Marvin Johnson, okay, was top 10 rated for a total of 9 years. His longest unbeaten run was an unbeaten run of 16 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 1 year. Now, Marvin Johnson had 6 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 2 wins. He scored 1 win against a pound for pound top 3 fighter. Big shout out to Antonio Mosley in the chat. Yeah, ignore the idiot above you, mate. I'm going to wipe him momentarily. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. Now, his opposition fought rate, okay, is 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 1 from 13. So Marvin Johnson had 9 fights against champions. That includes 4 wins, 5 losses, no draws with 3 knockouts. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, okay, including 1 win, 3 loss, no draw with 1 knockout. And Marvin Johnson had a total of 7 world title fights, ultimately including 4 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 1 title defence. So, yes, Nicholas Henri Siren, who I think is probably the same idiot as above. Antonio Mosley, if you've got administrator privileges, will you do me a favour and wipe both those guys off? So anyway, there is Marvin Johnson. Okay, when we go to fighter number 684, it is Oscar Bonavena. Now, Bonavena beat no world champions. He fought 62 rounds against champions. And he beat no Hall of Fame fighters, also fighting 50 rounds against Hall of Famers in his career. And Oscar Bonavena had 18 fights against rated fighters. Now, Bonavena scored 44 knockouts, okay, 25 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 8 in the first round. Bonavena also was top 10 rated for a total of 8 years. And his longest unbeaten run was an unbeaten run of 11 fights. Now, he was pound for pound rated for 0 years, okay, and he had 4 fights against pound for pounders, scoring no wins in 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Bonavena had 5 fights against champions, okay, all of them were defeats. Yeah, bye-bye. Antonio, I'll give you a moderator switch. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, the one thing to any clowns on my channel, because I always think, anyone can come along thinking, they're clever or they're just internet trolls or they've got the mental capacity of 3-year-olds. But, I just wipe them from my channel, really. I have no time for dealing with, children like them who have, well, it looks at the comments, IQs of like 10 or less. Oscar Bonavena had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including 4 defeats. He also had 1 title fight that was also a defeat. Antonio Mosley, what I'll do is I will actually... Yeah, very strange, actually. It's not allowing me to wrench you up, Antonio. Rather strange. Rather strange. So anyway, there's Bonavena in 684. Okay, when we go to fight number 683. Okay, it is Jimmy Delaney. Jimmy Delaney beat 1 world champion. Okay, he fought 78 rounds against champions. And Jimmy Delaney beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters. He also fought 108 rounds against Hall of Famers overall in his career. Now, he had 19 fights against rated fighters. Okay, scoring 20 knockouts, 10 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. He also was top 10 rated for 2 years, and the longest unbeaten run he had was an unbeaten run of 15 fights. Now, he was never pound for pound rated. He had 11 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 2 wins. He also scored 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 rated fighter, and he also scored 1 win against a pound for pound number 1 rated fighter. Now, his opposition fought rate was 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Delaney had 8 fights against champions, including 1 win, 6 loss, 1 draw. Okay, with 0 knockouts. He has 11 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 8 loss, 1 draw with 0 knockouts. And Jimmy Delaney has no world title fights. So on to our next fighter. Okay, I'll just give the idiot a chance to jump to one of his other profiles. Because I once had a guy like that before, actually. He had about 20 profiles, and he left a comment with one, so I hid him. So then he left a comment with the next one, I hid him, and I thought, the ultimate aim is all of his profiles are going to be blocked. But I thought, I'm more than happy to. So fighter number 682, okay, is Solly Smith. Now, Solly Smith beat 2 world champions, okay, fought 70 rounds against champions. And Solly Smith beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, also fighting 51 rounds against Hall of Famers. And he had 0 fights against rated fighters, being a pre-rating era fighter. Now, Solly Smith scored 18 knockouts, okay, 5 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. And Solly Smith was top 10 rated for 0 years, being a pre-rating era fighter. Now, his longest unbeaten run was an unbeaten run of 18 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 4 years. Now, he had 12 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 3 wins. He also scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 2 wins against pound for pound number 1 rated fighters. And his opposition fought rate was 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Solly Smith, okay, from the 7 fights against champions he scored 2 wins with 2 losses, 3 draws and 1 knockout. He had 5 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 1 loss, 3 draws with 0 knockouts. And he had 5 world title fights, including 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 2 title defences overall. So there's Solly Smith in 682. When we go to fight number 681, it is former coloured middleweight and heavyweight champion George Byers. Now, George Byers beat 1 world champion, okay, he fought 102 rounds against champions. And Byers, okay, actually beat no Hall of Fame fighters. He did fight 30 rounds against Hall of Famers throughout his career. And he fought 0 fights against rated fighters, of course, being a pre-rating era fighter. Now, George Byers scored 14 knockouts, 9 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. And he was top 10 rated, okay, for 0 years. Now, Byers' longest unbeaten run was an unbeaten run of 20 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Byers had 6 fights against pound for pounders, but scored no wins in the 3 pound for pound categories, and his opposition fought rate was 2 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 1 from 13. So Byers, okay, had 8 fights against champions. That included 1 win, 4 loss, 3 draw, with 0 knockouts. He had 3 fights against Hall of Famers. That included 2 losses, 1 draw with 0 knockouts, no wins, and he had 4 world title fights, including 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, with 1 title defence. So there's my latest 10 fighters down. Apologies anyone watching the video, although if you watch the video afterwards you won't get to see the low IQ club who were in the chat section. But next video, okay, anyone shows, I'll just ignore them and hide them, wipe them, and that'll be the end of that. I just won't even give them any credit. Normally I don't. Normally if I see a silly comment, you know, I just remove them immediately. From next video on I will do that. I will no longer respond to them at all. I'll just wipe them out. Because ultimately, you know, in the world of YouTube, you know, you get a lot of trolls, and you know, I've been dealing with trolls over 10 years, and it got to a point where I just did not pay them any attention whatsoever. But sadly, you know, like little mice, you know, they infest into every hole trying to eat your cheese, and ultimately, you know, they're still mice at the end of the day. Yeah, it's really strange, this Antonio. I'm trying to give you a wrench, okay, but it's not acting normally. I don't know why. Let me just, no, it's acting really strange, actually. Let me click, nope. Yeah, very strange that. It's not letting me wrench you up, strangely. But anyway, there's my latest video. Okay, I'll be back over coming days with more videos. Warning to any further trolls, you will no longer get a response. You'll just be wiped off the channel instantly while I crack on with my work. I've no time for 4-year-olds. So anyway, I'll be back soon. I'm out for now.